of horror. Happy Halloween. I wanted to show you the physical copy of the horror anthology that I am in. It's called Local Haunts. See the awesome cover? I'm going to zoom into that cover a little bit so you can see it if you haven't seen it. It is edited by Regina St. Clair, who also has a story in this book. And it's about 19 different authors in here. My story is called The Room Within. All these stories in here are based around local haunts, meaning our location. So haunts near our location. My story, The Room Within, is actually based off of, there's like 2 or 3 different haunted houses that I based as a story around here in Merlin. And of course, me being me, I had to run with it. If you look it up in Maryland, there are a lot of different haunted places. One of my favorite ones is the Goat Man. We have a road where the Goat Man was, and blah, blah, blah. That's one of my favorite ones, but that has nothing to do with the Room Within. There's a few haunted houses in Merlin that the Room Within is based around. In the story The Room Within, the main character's name is Daniel, and he purchases a home that he really liked. The owner was kind of sketchy and off a little bit, so he purchases the home, and then there's something within it that turns out not too well and very scary. So that's the general premise of the story. So I wanted to give you a bit of a background on The Room Within and why it made it into the Local Haunts book. But yeah, being a fiction writer and having a very vivid imagination, I pretty much ran with that one. And as you get, once you read this one, it ends. It's a standalone. The Room Within is a standalone. Part 1 is even a standalone. But if you want to see what happens with Daniel, you'll have to read the complete Room Within next year. But I'm very happy it made it into this. This is doing very well. It's quite received. There's a lot of amazing stories in here. So let's get into the Local Haunts book tag. The Local Haunts tag was created by Dane Reads. Question number 1. Tell us about a creepy or spooky place that's close to you. I'm going to talk about the Elms House, which is in Cockeysville, Maryland. It served as a home for the elderly, the mentally unwell, the indigent, and children, which opened in 1874. An addition was added on later, which housed prisoners. People who have spent time there have said it is haunted, that you could hear the voices of women talking upstairs, children at play, and even see some of their little faces in windows if you stand outside. So that place is one of our actual haunted locations in Merlin, and it's not too far from me. That's a good one. Question number 2. A Stone's Throw. Tell us about a story with a young female character who has a tough life. Actually, I'm going to name the female lead in my current debut novel, which comes out in 2021, closer to the fall, which is called Cagliostro, Tale of the Libertine. The female lead in the story name is Allison, and she has a very tough life, especially in her younger years. Her mother passes away. Passes away is a nice way of putting murdered. And she has to go through quite a lot of stuff after that. And let's just say monsters are real in her world. But you'll find out more about Allison as the months go on my channel. Don't worry. And you'll meet her next year sometime. Question number 3. Crowthorne. Tell us about a story with a harmful friendship. That's going to be a novel by A.L. Williams, which is a male-male contemporary romance with a love triangle. The friendship in question, and I think that is harmful in this story, is between Rashawn and Isabel. let's just say I didn't care for Isabel very much. And she was quite harmful, in my opinion, to Rashawn. In this story, it's a very good book. It's a roller coaster of emotion. So I definitely recommend it for anyone who reads contemporary romance. Yeah, I let's just say I wanted to punch Isabel in the face. Even at the end, I still kind of wanted to punch her in the face a little bit. Yeah. Check out A.L. Williams if you haven't heard of him. And he writes some very enthralling and interesting stories. Question number 4. Screen 8. Tell us about a movie that scares you and that's based on a true story. I'm going to say The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which I really enjoyed it. To say that it scares me, well, not much scares me, so I have to go with at least supernatural, unexplained possession style stories, because those things have real bases in them and are based off of actual events. Especially The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which is loosely based off the story of Annalisa Michael. So, yeah, that was one of the ones that I really liked, and that was based on actual events. So, yeah. Question number 5. The Mount of Death. Beer Me. Tell us about a story where a drink plays a role in the plot. I'm going to go with Doctor Sleep, which is a sequel to The Shining. If you know The Shining, then you know that the father from that story had a drinking problem, and it passed on, in this case, to the main character in Doctor Sleep, which is his son Danny, who was also in The Shining, but was a small boy at the time. Let's just say that in this case, the drinking issue, the alcoholism passed on, and his son also had the same issue, which played a part in the story, for sure. If you haven't read The Shining or Doctor Sleep, I definitely recommend that you pick those up and check them out. Stephen King does a good job, especially with that story series. It's one of the better ones, and it's actually movie adaptations of them, so you can also check them out. If you're going to watch the movie adaptations, I don't, in my personal opinion, recommend the first version of The Shining. I recommend the one that came out years later. Was it 2010? I'm not sure. It wasn't 2000. Was it 2010? Well, let's just say it's not the one with Jack Nicholson. If you look up The Shining, there is another one that came out that Stephen King had more to do with. That was a better version of it, closer to the actual events that happened in the novel. I didn't really care for the one with Jack Nicholson. It kind of changed the whole outcome of how it happened with the father. I prefer the other version of the Shining movie. And then Doctor Sleep did recently come out, not too long ago. Unfortunately, they said they wanted to pay homage to the original Shining by doing what they did with it in the end. So I'm kind of frowned on that a little bit, since I didn't like that version. But it is what it is. It still was a decent movie, so I recommend you watching them if you haven't seen them. They're good horror movies to watch for Halloween. So yeah. Question number 6. The Blocked Cellar. Tell us about your favorite horror, paranormal, or true crime YouTube channel. My favorite HorrorTube YouTube channel would be Maven of the Evening Tide. I actually came across her channel not long ago. I think maybe 2 months ago, possibly. But yeah, I recommend her channel. Her live streams are awesome. She's really funny. And she does really very informative interviews with people. So her channel is very elaborate. But I definitely recommend her channel. She's really cool. Question number 7. The Night Watchman. Tell us about a story that's set partly at night. Alright, I'm going to cheat a little bit on this one. It's going to be This story is set only partly at day. It's mostly at night. I'm going to tell you about 30 Days of Night, the comic series. That one has some day at the beginning and some day at the end. So partly at night. 30 Days of Night, if you haven't heard of it, there is a movie adaptation of the series called 30 Days of Night. And it is set in Alaska. Where there's 30 days of the sun setting and 30 days of night, literally. So the vampires thought that this would be a good place to feast. And then this is what they do. These are vicious, vicious vampires. And it's a very good horror movie that I could recommend for you to watch during the Halloween month. And the comic book series is also awesome to pick up. And it's very good. Question number 8. Alone Among the Gum Trees. Tell us about a story that takes place in the wilderness. I'm going to say The Troop, which is an old-fashioned horror. It's about a man who leads a troop of boys into the Canadian wilderness for a weekend camping trip, only to have a stranger that looks worse for wear stumble upon them, and it's not good, to say the least. He's a human carrier of a bioengineered nightmare. I recommend giving it a read. It's definitely a good horror. You just have to see where things go. Question 9. Highway to Hell. Tell us about a story that involves music. I'm going to go with Queen of the Damned on this one. As you know, if you know anything about Anne Rice's story series based around Lestat, the vampire, you know that Lestat plays music. He's very music inclined, even throughout his entirety of his existence. And in this one, he plays music as per usual, and that plays a big part in the story. Like, he has a band, and he's like in the public eye, and they have no idea he's a vampire. Just think he's like a goth metal band, and he's like playing up he's a vampire, blah blah blah. But he really is. So he uses music as his way of being out in the public around humans, and them, being right in the midst of them, and they never know that he's a vampire. So yes, music plays a very large, very, very large part in that story. Question number 10, at the end of the rope. Tag some booktubers or HorrorTube friends. I will say that I'm new to HorrorTube, so I don't have a lot of HorrorTube, BookTube friends. So if you are from HorrorTube or BookTube and you stumble across my channel, please do the tag. It's very fun. A lot of informative questions, get you involved with the local haunts and book. So yeah, I think that I will tag some of my AuthorTube people because they would love to get involved with this tag, I think. So I'm going to tag author Aphrodite Lee, author D.L. Stewart, and author A.L. Williams. If they want to take up this tag, they totally can. The questions are pretty open, so a lot of people can take it up either way. And it also gets you in touch with local haunts, which you should be reading anyway because it's Halloween. So yeah. Alright guys, thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video. Stay scared.